Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. It's countdown to Nigeria's general elections, which begin with the Presidential and National Assembly next week, Saturday the 16th of February. Now, as the preparations peak, there are alleged reports of some politicians seeing the election as a do-or-die affair, conniving with external forces to destabilize the polity. The concern here is about the effect of attempts to discredit the polls and undermine national development. Could there be a grand design to slow the country's growth, or could this be put down to the fear of losing at the polls? Or could there be grounds for doubting the credibility of the coming elections, even with consistent reassurances by the sitting administration of free and fair elections? Now, these are some of the issues we'll be considering tonight on NTA Tuesday Live. But first, let's get to see this report.
Democracy is globally recognized as the most practiced form of government, where citizens freely exercise the power to choose their leaders through the ballot and also hold them to account. One of the main challenges of democratic practice is the conduct of elections, where the people's representatives are elected. Sometimes the contest gets so heated that there are accusations and counter-accusations of fraud and attempt to shortchange candidates or political parties. In order to ensure global applicability, countries cooperate and collaborate to observe and monitor each other's elections, including global and regional bodies such as the ECOWAS, African Union, Commonwealth, United Nations, and many others. This is done under strict observance of international standards of openness, objectivity, and non-interference. Since the return of democracy to Nigeria in 1999, the country has welcomed local and international observers to monitor the electoral process as it continues to build its democracy. Ahead of the 2019 general elections, the President Muhammadu Buhari administration has made it clear that it stands for elections that will be free, fair and credible. It has also demonstrated its determination not to interfere with the INEC as it goes about conducting the elections. This perhaps explains why the government expressed concerns with statements by the European Union, United States of America, and the United Kingdom's representatives in Nigeria over the suspension of the Chief Justice of Nigeria in a matter that is not strictly related to the elections. This, according to the government, is capable of creating unnecessary tension. It also views the action as some level of interference in the elections that appears to favor the opposition. Observers have warned against foreign intervention in Nigeria's elections, as this can be counterproductive given the examples of other countries where foreign interventions occurred. Several questions therefore arise. What is the line between international observations, scrutiny, and foreign interference? Can foreign interference be justified under any condition, particularly in Nigeria's journey to 2019 elections? What are the implications of such action? Are there better ways to address concerns of the international community without crossing the line of interference? These are some of the questions guests on Tuesday Live will be dealing with.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me go ahead and introduce our guests to you. We'd like to welcome to this program Malam Ahmed Nasser El-Rufai. He's the governor of Kaduna State. Governor El-Rufai, thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, we're also joined tonight by Nasara Kogo Umar, who's a regular on this program, an international analyst on international relations, diplomacy, and good governance. He's also a lawyer. Thanks for being here, Nasara.
Good evening, Nigerians.
Let me also welcome to this program Dodeye Aripo, who's a retired director of the Department of State Services, now a security consultant. Thanks for being here.
Good evening. Thank you.
And here also is Mohammed Bello Shehu, a former student leader, a consultant in international relations, public affairs analyst, and an advocate for good governance in Africa. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Joining us from our Lagos Network Center is Professor Bola Akinteriwa, a former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. He joins us from Lagos. Good evening, Prof.
Thank you for having me this year.
Right, thanks. Well, as usual, we acquaint you with the procedure of this program. At the appropriate time, you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of them. And as we say every Tuesday, for those who will be calling in tonight, do us a favor. When your call gets through, turn down the volume of your TV set. Just reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through to the studio is you'll see your name appear on screen. Once that happens, it signifies that your call is through to the studio, and you can just go right ahead with a question or comment. Don't waste too much time. Don't bother about greetings. Just go straight to the point and keep it as short as possible and straight to the point so that others can get on the platform. All right. So once again, thanks for joining us on Tuesday Live. Let's begin by looking at the upcoming elections. And for now, we can say it's just a matter of days, really. And Governor El-Rufai, how far were the campaigns? Would you say that they've been progressing in a mature and dignified manner that is befitting of a country like Nigeria?
I think so. I think on the whole, the campaign has been orderly, has been peaceful. I would like to say that our party has been campaigning more aggressively. The president has visited virtually all the states of the federation. And at the state level, the governors have been going around their constituencies. I have gone around, I've missed a few, but I'm making up. So everything has gone very well. I think we are all getting ready for the first round of elections on the 16th of February, which is my birthday, by the way, so I'm expecting a great birthday present. But I think on the whole, the campaign has gone very well.
All right. Okay. Minister, what do you see as you look at the turf?
Happy birthday in advance, Your Excellency, first of all. I would not share a view with His Excellency because I'm not really comfortable with the way the electioneering campaign is going on. The essence of democracy as a whole is self-determination. Section 14 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria predicates a democratic system of governance, the system of governance in Nigeria. If you remember, historically speaking, the founding fathers of the nation, doggedly fought for the independence of Nigeria, essentially because of one factor, because we want to be self-determined. We want to be the ones to be determining the fate of our nation building. From 1885, after the scramble and amalgamation of Africa by the imperial powers, up to 1960, totaling a period of 75 years. Series of efforts, dogged determination of frontline nationalists culminated into us getting independence in 1960. You remember Nana of Ishekiri, Jaja of Afobo, the Sultana Tahiru, and many other people that fought against the colonial domination. Now, immediately after the independence, 15 years after, to be precise, head of state then, Murtala Mohammed, said at OAU summit that Africa has come of age, that we are no more under the supreme control of any other imperial power, no matter how powerful. He was toppled soon thereafter, and then democracy was entrenched to be the model of governance, and we got the Second Republic. Now, during the Second Republic, more power play of politics of issues, politics of entrenchment of virile democracy based on the determination of the citizenry was visibly more seen that time. Now that we have gotten about 20 years of democratic experience, one should expect a more superior quality of quantum of power play from the political power players, being taken into careful cognizance of the fact that Nigeria is the giant of the West African sub-region, is a leader of the African continent and is a mirror of model of reflection among the black countries in the world, especially now that Africa is trying to acquire a seat at the level of the United Nations General Assembly. So we expect nothing short of a novel type of play that other countries, especially the superpowers of the world, will see that Nigeria is really at play. But going by the scenario going on now, the attacks based on party belonging rather than the citizens' expectations vis-a-vis the agenda setting for 2019 and beyond. I'm seeing that in the decimal rather than in the positive.
All right. You're not impressed. But let's go over to Dodeye.
Well, I think I'll rather identify with Governor El-Rufai. I think the campaigns have gone well so far. If I want to look at it from the security point of view, basically, I'm sure a lot of concerns would have risen amongst Nigerians. We've not had any bombings at any rally. We've not, if you want to look at basically security at various places has been, I mean, quite top notch. And incidents that we would have expected at this time have not really happened. So to a great extent, issues are actually being brought forward. The parties are campaigning healthily. So to a great extent, I think everything is going well. I will agree with Governor El-Rufai on that.
Okay, so let's go over to Mohammed Bello Shehu.
Well, everything that needs to be said has been said, especially by my elder brother, Governor Rufai. Like also the security expert here said, you know, looking at the situation now in comparison to what used to happen between 1999 to 2015, you had a dominant political party then that in most cases they determine who speaks in a place, changes of venue, but you don't get this complaint now. Now that the PDP is in opposition, they are able to go about their business all over Nigeria, organizing their rallies peacefully. That is a remarkable difference from what used to happen. I mean, I remember in those days when Buhari was trying 2007, 2011 in some places, I mean, he is tear-gassed, or venues are suddenly changed, or even governors saying that they will deny him an opportunity, a space for him to come and speak to his supporters. I remember the incidents in 2007 when he tried to go to Bauchi, the governor tried to stop it, and then from Bauchi to Gombe, in the evening, people were shooting him with bows and arrows. And it was only then the late emir of Gombe that allowed him a space within his palace to be able to speak to his supporters. Not even hotels were allowed. So I will say that I commend President Muhammadu Buhari for creating that space and allowing the security services and all the other agencies and organs of government to do their jobs without interference from him. And that is a remarkable difference. And I hope this system continues.
All right, let's go over to our Lagos Center now. And Prof, which side would you be pitching your tent? What's the quality of what we've seen so far? Are you impressed, or there are concerns about how the campaigns are progressing?
Impressed with concerns. Impressed because of the many factors already raised by Nasir, by Manasara. You see, when we are evaluating any critical issue, many parameters, you know, are often considered. When we consider the issue of security, we will say yes, it's quite good because we've not been witnessing bloodshed. Now, if I'm to agree with Minor Sarah, who traced the history back to 1885 to date, are now looking at it chronologically to suggest that by now, over more than 100 years, which you have done better, he's equally right. It all depends on what we want to consider. For instance, in advanced countries, when we are talking about campaigns, you look at the funding of the campaigns. Are we really complying with the constitutional provisions? The campaigners, where are they getting their money from? Are the campaign funds not even funds from corruption? Since we know that the Mohammed Buharian approach to the fight against corruption, nobody is discussing that. Now, the presidential candidates, for instance, to what extent are they campaigning on the basis of popular wish within their party? Ezekwesili, for instance, we know the dispute between her and her party. This falls within the framework of campaigns. Is that good enough? When you go beyond funding, our campaigns have not been ideologically driven. This is a critical issue. You will never find, for instance, say in the United States, a Democrat being a Democrat in the morning, Republican in the afternoon, labor unionist in the evening. But here in Nigeria, you can be PDP in the morning, APC the following day. These are critical issues there. So when we put all this together, I think that I should agree with my brother Nasir, and I can congratulate him already for February 16 well in advance, who says it is commendable. Yes, on the one hand, it is commendable. On the other hand, Sarah is not wrong. Let us see how we go about it.
Prof, we'll return to you in a moment. But then back here in Abuja, the whole process is for the main actors to convince the electorate. And so people have asked the question, have we reached a level where the voters have been adequately briefed? Have we broadened the scope? Have the voters enough information, enough background? Or is it just about the usual sentiments about someone from a particular area, from a particular creed, from a particular faith?
Well, you know, if I can start with that, because I think I differ from all my colleagues here in the sense that I'm a contestant.
Right.
And as a contestant, it is my duty to persuade voters that they should vote for me. And I would therefore be speaking as a contestant and on behalf of my party, because I'm also part of the team that developed our strategy and election messaging. I think that at least the APC has been campaigning on issues, has been campaigning on its record. We've been campaigning on the president's record, and at the level of governors, we've been campaigning on our records. Of course, politics is a mixed bag, okay? Issues play a part, but sentiments also play a part. Identity is always an issue all over the world. That is how someone like Trump got elected. He didn't get elected on the basis of issues because he was very thin on issues, but he found a way to connect with a particular demographic in America that is unhappy. So these issues are always there. In my state of Kaduna, for instance, religion and ethnicity have always been very big issues in politics, much more than the substance, much more than the bread and butter of getting schools, hospitals, and physical infrastructure to work. We are trying to change that narrative. We are trying to say that it does not matter who you elect. Who do you elect, whether he's black or white, tall or short, male or female, Christian or Muslim, is not as important as the work that he will do for you. This has been a struggle in the last 3.5 years in Kaduna, because Kaduna is so deep into politics of ethnicity and religion. But in many parts of Nigeria, ethnicity, religion, and so on are not that important. And you will see voters interrogating candidates on the issues. What have you done for us in the last 3.5 years? And I think that as an active participant in this republic, from the transition program of Abdulsalami Abubakar right through Obasanjo's regime and so on, I have been a participant and observer and a victim as well. I can say that I see a gradual improvement, a gradual progression away from sentiments to issues. For instance, in this election, unlike the 2011 election where many people voted against Goodluck Jonathan because of where he came from or whatever, even members of the PDP, some of them worked against Jonathan for various reasons. In this election, we have two leading candidates from the same part of the country, same ethnicity more or less, same religion more or less. So voters are going to have to decide more on affiliation and issues and track record and the character of the candidate, and whether they trust that candidate to run Nigeria well, much more than his identity. So I think we are moving gradually and surely. And Prof made a comment about and my brother Mainasara about having been in this struggle for 100 and something years, and should we not be better? It's correct, it's true, we can be better. But are we getting better? I say we are getting better. We are not where we should be, but I think Nigeria has made some strides in the last few years, and I just hope we continue to build on that and get better and better. Prof has also talked about political parties, about people changing political parties. If you study the other democracies that have matured, where they have matured more or less to a two-party system, if you go back to the history 100 years, 200 years ago, whether it is UK or US, you will see these changes. These parties evolve, people change from one party to another, but we'll get to a point where everyone will know where he is. I mean, when we formed the APC, as one of those at the core of forming the APC, we knew that there will be an equilibrium point in which people that don't belong to APC, that just joined because it was an election platform, would leave, and they have left. The Atikus and the Sarakis were in APC, they have left. They never belonged. So this kind of adjustments are part of a political evolution. And, in a decade or so, you will see people becoming ideologically attached to a party, and they won't change. Once we pass the phase of opportunism, where people just join a party because they think it will win, whether they believe in the party's programs or not, we'll get there. But are we moving in the right direction, Cyril? I would say we are. And maybe because I'm an old man, I am prepared to be patient. 20 years ago, I would be impatient and say we should be with here or there. But now I know that societies evolve slowly over time. Building of a country is a long-term project. And as long as we are moving in the right direction, I am happy. And I am happy because I think we are moving in the right direction.
All right. Yes, we might be, but the question would be, should it be faster?
By all means,
all right.
It can be faster.
Okay, but let's come to me, Sarah. And the campaigns have been robust.
Yes.
Public spaces and in the media. But
Yes.
there is also this underlying factor that people have talked about and alluded to. Hate speech, fake news, and it's a mix now. Perhaps 20, 30 years ago, it would not be at this level because the platforms were not readily available. Today, you have all kinds of platforms, and they used to say seeing is believing. Now, seeing might not be believing.
Yeah.
Well, there are some factors that are responsible for all these shenanigans we are seeing in the political power play. Section 221 to 229 predicates the way political parties should evolve and should function as the prime movers of democracy and governance. Under that, the political parties clearly have responsibility. Number one, education of the citizenry. Number two, organization of the democratic structures. Most of the political parties we are having currently in the power play do not have these basic essentialities. They are not founded on ideological base. They do not even have the compendium of their membership register. And that is the reason why you will discover everybody jumping from one party to the other without due regard to ideological principles or set of values or set of programs that this particular party is identified with. We are lucky with the coming of President Buhari, for example, his dogged determination towards entrenchment of people's supremacy, his system of ensuring that votes of the popular majority counts, and his policy of non-interference with the electoral umpire. These are really very, very good sediments that, if correctly applied, will do a very good germane efforts towards seeing us into democratic maturity. 20 years is quite a huge year enough for us to have developed to the level of democratic stability. But unfortunately, up to this moment, you will see, like my brother has talked about, issue of political opportunism. People joining the party, there are so many of them. The moment, for example, President Muhammadu Buhari now decides to quit the APC, it will flop down. Just like the way, for example, when former President Olusegun Obasanjo withdrew himself from the then ruling party. Until now, that because of the political activities now, it is regaining momentum now, trying to bounce back to the stream. So politics should be a game of service rather than game of investments. So many of them are looking at it as avenues of investments, as a result of which they will look towards which of the leanings will shortcut the possibility of them to reach to where they will reach, not really in the interest of the national service. Our constitution, if it is to be respected very clearly, for example, sections 15, subsections 2, 3, and 4, talks about the social responsibility of the political engineers, the need for you to consider every geopolitical part of the country as part and parcel of your own constituency. Section 10, for example, of the Constitution abhors the possibility of state religion. There's nothing like religion. Like I said, sections 13, section 14, and 15 all equally talks about nationalism, patriotism, discipline, and nation building. Even the motto of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, unity and faith, peace, and progress. But you will discover that the political power players are more united in the issue of the equation of where it will butter their bread, rather than the issue of evolution of political culture that will germinate consequently into issue of political ideology. We don't have parties based on political ideologies. Even the campaigns, if you look at the campaigns very carefully, there's a very wide gap between the political parties and the campaign machineries of the respective contestants, which is not supposed to be so. The political machinery should be the driving engine that should carry every contestant, no matter how high the office you are contesting, as an ordinary member of the party, and you should subject yourself to the hegemony of the party's supremacy.
So why in this context do we regularly hear stories about alleged attempts to subvert the will of the people, to twist the electoral umpire, to rig, as that word has become, entrenched in the political lexicon, to rig elections? These are allegations that keep coming up all the time about attempts, and this without regard to whatever assurances may have been given about ensuring a level playing field and credible elections. Why have we seen that?
Well, politics will be politics. Politics, so everybody is going to play the game he thinks will play better for him. And so we are going to keep seeing this. It's something I don't even think happens only in Nigeria. Maybe they play it in abroad, they will play it in a better way. And so if somebody feels he has a disadvantage or starts having fear, sometimes it's fear. Oh, I'm going to lose. Or the ruling party has some level of advantage over me in a certain place. So what do I do to make everybody start thinking that I'm actually strong when I'm not? So they are going to rig me out. Oh, they have intimidated me. So you're going to keep seeing that, and sometimes there's no substance to such stories, and that's why you've talked about things like fake news. Like you said, there are too many platforms now these days. Even when I got the first time I got the information about the vice president's helicopter
crash.
crash.
You didn't believe it?
I didn't believe it. Because I quickly went to other platforms to check.
Yeah.
I said, could this be true? I don't know. I didn't trust that link. So it was much later I saw several, actually this thing is true. So I think it's that you see people trying to manipulate. And, you know, I think to a great extent is illiteracy in the society. It's high. So people are easily indoctrinated. People can, I mean, sentiments can be raised through such manipulations. And like the governor said, oftentimes it tapers, Nigeria's politics is particularly peculiar. It tapers often into ethnicity and religious sentiments. And so ultimately, I think it's just politics.
All right, so take everything with a pinch of salt, but now it's just more than that. Perhaps a spoonful of salt.
Somewhat, you know, but I will also agree with my elder brother and disagree with Barrister here over the issue of ideology. If you look at the political space now, clearly with the coming of Muhammadu Buhari, like Malam Nasru has said previously, that he dominates the political space all these years, he is defined as somebody who cares for the common Nigerians. That's his basic constituency. And the other side, you know, those who feel they are the rulers who decide what goes on in Nigeria for several years. All of a sudden he has come and has dislodged them. And you can see now how they congregated in one side, trying as much as possible to put their last stand. This is almost like the last battle. One side is saying, we are coming in, we're going to sell every public property and asset, that when we make that money, the rest of Nigerians are going to make the money. But President Buhari and his vice president are saying, no, this is a commonwealth. We are going to embark on programs that will empower those downtrodden people that will also be able to move up. And this is where we are now. And for the first time, you have an opposition party that has lost power after 16 years. And they have tested that bitterness of lack of power. Now they are trying to hold on to every bit of help that they could get to make sure they get that power back. And in that context, you could see now there is sort of international conspiracy with some actors, you know, trying to delegitimize the election, even though for the first time in the history of Nigeria, we have a sitting president who has said, he was asked this question, what happened if you lose the election? And he said, I have lost elections before. If I lose, there are grounds for me to go to court. I will go to court. So, I mean, there is a wide difference. And I think that President Muhammadu Buhari should be commended, like I said earlier, for creating a space where his party sometimes wins election, some other time they lose election. Gone are the days of do or die affair. One of the leading candidates of this election now, one time had boasted that even in 2007, I think they did 2003, that they were lenient with one of the governors in the Southwest, that they could have swept him by hook or by crook. And it's public knowledge. And you can see within the last 4 years, lawyers are not happy because you lose election, you go to court, you pay this X amount, you pay the sons, you bribe the judges, and you do this, and sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Even the money in circulation, my elder brother here can bear me witness. 4 years ago this time around, you have people walking with envelopes full of dollars just because elections are coming. And even the $2.1 billion that was taken out of the treasury for arms was given to politicians. But for the first time, you have a ruling party that is running for re-election. They don't even know where to get the money to prosecute the election. So this is a remarkable difference. And I think within the next 4 years or 10 years or 20 years, Nigeria will arrive at its destination.
Okay, back to Lagos now. Prof, this probably would be on in your turf if we take it a step further and find out what the psychology is about expressing doubts or fears about a given situation and requesting for external help. We've seen this happen, and it's become somewhat a usual thing in Nigeria to find certain citizens always calling out to international bodies and organizations to intervene in certain situations that at best may not necessarily require such requests.
Yeah, thank you for this question. You see, let's begin with the submissions of Minor Sarah, with that of Nasir and Umar. You see, why are people talking about fears of rigging and so on and so forth? You see, you can have many reasons that can be categorized into either profound cause, coincidental cause, accidental cause, and so on and so forth. As much as I agree that, look, we need to commend our own President Muhammadu Buhari for what he stands for, we must at the same time remove that commendation from those people who are working for him, because they are the ones sending the signals of fears to the people of Nigeria and to the world. I have to make this prolegomena, this introduction at this point, in order to be able to explain this issue of interference. You see, the people advising our president, our elected president, they are always engaging in strategic miscalculations. Even when they have a good policy, the timing of the policies, making it known to the public, really requires further research. Either they are deliberately doing that one to undermine him, or otherwise. We can give many instances, to the extent that the Nigerian people will now say, this elected president we voted for in 2015, is he the one trying to do this? This is where the problem is. Now let's come to the specific question you have asked, for instance. Interference. Please, it is important to first of all distinguish between the principle of interference and the principle of intervention. All right? We have interference and non-interference. We have intervention and non-intervention. When we talk about interference, first of all, it is about prognosing in affairs that are not yours, but without engaging in the use of force. The moment you now talk about the use of force, then you move from the domain of crisis, sociology of crisis, to conflict. Conflict, when you engage in the use of force, you talk about intervention. Now, when you go to Article 2, Paragraph 7 of the UN Charter, it talks about non-intervention in the domestic affairs of other sovereign states. Other sovereign states have exclusive competence in the management, in the conduct of their own affairs. But when they talk about non-intervention, it means that no country shall have the right to engage militarily, using force in the affairs of other countries. What is acceptable is within the framework of collective security. You will need the international community to so decide. That was why the United Nations, for instance, gave ECOWAS the right to have the ECOMOG to intervene in maintenance of regional security. Every day, virtually everyone, including Cyril Tsoba, including Nasir Rufai, including Minor Sarah, everybody interferes. When you make a comment where you are sitting, You are commenting on what is happening in Venezuela. You are talking about Brexit. You are talking about Russia. You are interfering. So now, when we now come to the situational reality of intervention in our politics, like yesterday was the last day for of the ultimatum given to Venezuela. Everybody is expecting that there might be a military intervention. So when we are talking about this, under no circumstance should any country arrogate to itself any power, whether it's joint power or exclusive power, to intervene in Nigeria's affairs, in our elections. But the bitter truth is that there are many reasons justifying how and why the international community can intervene, even if Nigerians do not want that. There are also reasons militating against non-intervention. Let me give you, for instance, some examples. Now, Nigeria's own policy, Nigeria's foreign policy, aids and abets intervention. Our policies encourage that. Let me take you back the memory lane, just to remind. Don't forget that in 1963, for instance, Sylvanus Olympio of Togo was assassinated. In the eyes of Nigeria, Jajawashuku then was the foreign minister. He told the global community that under no circumstance will Nigeria accept the killing of a friend of a Nigeria. That there has to be an exception to the rule. And that still remains an exception to the rule in our foreign policy. Another concrete example, this same Jajawashuku and Aminu Sule, those great men by that time, came out with the argument that, look, under no circumstance will Nigeria accept apartheid as belonging to domestic affairs, the domestic domain of any country. The Nigerian government adopted the policy of no compromise with apartheid. So when we are talking about intervention, we have been, all right, on the path of saying when our national interest is at stake, we will not accept that. It was Nigeria under Babangida that we came up with this ECOMOG. Didn't we intervene in Liberia? Take another example. There are many. Don't let me waste your time with all these examples. If you now want to look at other factors militating against non-intervention, there are many, many reasons. Let me give you one, for instance. International responsibility to protect, IR2P, they call it. It provides that in a situation whereby we have a president who is unable to protect the people, either in the context of genocidal crimes, all right, abuse of fundamental international law, they gave all these conditions. So the international community arrogates to itself that they can come. Now when you go back to 1990, the conference of La Baule in France, during the Franco-African Summit by that time, France spearheaded the argument that any country that refuses to democratize will not be given any development aid. This idea was sold to Europe and America. It was imbibed. Now, the diplomatic practice now is that where you have a situation whereby countries are going along the dictatorial path, they will gang up and come in. Now, the issue is that at the end of the day, who is right? When you are able to use your force and the international community does not have control over you, please, what are you going to do? At the end of the day, at the level of the United Nations, it is the principle of weighted voting that always appears. All right, you want me to stop? All right.
Yeah, because you've raised so many issues, and certainly from this end here, we'll be having responses to some of the issues that you have raised here, particularly on the question of interference, intervention. And perhaps when we return to you, we'll also take up some other issue which some people have put across and said, why is it that you would always ask for assistance and then you'd say, no, don't get involved? But we'll come to that. But let's hear you first respond to Prof's
well, look, before I get to the issues of interference and intervention that Prof raised, I think you raised a fundamental question that I want to comment upon. Why are there shouts of rigging of elections? I think my brother today tried to throw light on that. I mean, when a politician faces an election situation and he thinks he's likely to lose, he is quite likely to start crying wolf. Okay, it's normal. It's human, and it's political. Okay, but what we are seeing in Nigeria in this election cycle is illogical, because President Muhammadu Buhari has, under his watch, overseen the conduct of several elections. We've seen the election of Kogi, Bayelsa, Ekiti, Oshun, Anambra. At least 5 governorship elections have taken place since President Buhari took over. And there is not one instance that anyone from the ruling party or the opposition party or any party for that matter will accuse the federal government of interfering with INEC's operations. Okay, so the president, I think, has a credible track record of non-interference in the running of INEC, okay, under 2 different heads of INEC. So I think anyone that accuses President Muhammadu Buhari or his party of trying to rig elections is being too clever by half, or at best, or totally irresponsible and reckless, because there is no record of the president, interfering in elections and so on. And the best person to ask is the governor of Anambra State. He will give that testimony where the president even intervened to change security chiefs when the governor complained that some security chiefs have been compromised. Okay, so the president has been trying. So I think in the interest of Nigeria, in the public interest, we should stop being irresponsible and politicizing everything. Let's look at the record of this president and INEC. Secondly, I was quite visible in Oshun in the last election. And I know what happened in Ekiti. I was also in Edo. And what I have seen on the part of INEC is rapid improvement in their operations. Their logistical capabilities have improved. Their capacity to conduct credible elections has been significantly improved. I was most impressed. I think we are getting to a point, in my view, that as a politician, I will not need polling agents on election day, because it will be nearly impossible to manipulate the results. So I am confident, based on what I have seen, from Kogi to Edo down to Oshun 1. Oshun 1, I mean the first round of Oshun election, because I was there. I wasn't around for Oshun 2. I think INEC is in a position to conduct and deliver very credible elections, and nobody should be afraid. You can only be afraid if you're sure you're going to lose and you want to create a foundation for future crisis. And this is what is worrying me. All the information, all the signals we are getting from the PDP indicates that, 1, they know they will lose these elections. 2, they want to delegitimize the results in advance. No one in the PDP can point at the leadership of INEC and say that they're in a position to manipulate election results. There is no record of that, even after we've elected 6 governors out of cycle. So they want to delegitimize the results in advance so that when they lose, they say, we told you so. Number 3, it appears to me, and from all the intelligence available to us, that they are trying to create a crisis after the results are announced and they have lost. Okay? And I think every responsible Nigerian should rise up against this. Where does interference come in? I now come to Prof. Prof is trying to differentiate between interference and intervention. It is a basic principle of international law that no country should interfere in the internal affairs of another country. You can comment. We can comment on Brexit. We can comment. That's not interference. But when you come into a country and you make statements without facts that tend to complicate the internal governance of that country, that is interference, and that is irresponsible. What we have seen from the three countries, the US, UK, and EU, in response to the suspension of the Chief Justice and trying to link the suspension of the Chief Justice to electoral outcome is the most irresponsible piece of diplomatic mishap I've ever seen in my 59 years of living in Nigeria. And I have read about international law. I have seen how countries operate. Those statements were coordinated. They were based on no information at all, and they were most irresponsible. And I'm happy that the presidency responded to it. Now, as Nigerians, we must understand that these guys can sit pretty in their countries and say things, but when the crisis breaks, we are here. We are the victims. We are the victims. Our wives and children are the victims. We must rise up and unite and say that no to violence in this country. We have every confidence that INEC will conduct credible elections. And we challenge everyone, the opposition parties, to point out what part of the logistical arrangements or the electoral preparations give room for any manipulation. Otherwise, they should shut up and go and get people to vote for them. We all do polls. Okay, a poll was released today, by the opposition showing that they are likely to win. We have our own polls. We have our own polls that show something different. But let us not use our own internal polls or procured polls to try to delegitimize the election in advance. At the end of the day, Cyril, it is Nigerians, 84 million registered voters, that will line up and vote on the 16th of February. Let us wait for the results. And if the results are not what we expect them to be, there is a process to challenge them. We have election tribunals, challenge them. President Buhari did that 3 times. He never resorted to violence. He never called for violence. He went to the Supreme Court 3 times.
It's true.
Let these other parties that are not used to losing elections. We are used to losing elections. Those of us that came from opposition, we know the pain of losing elections. We know the pain of even elections being stolen from us. But we never resorted to violence. We went through the legal process. Even if it was unfair to us, we accepted the outcome. Let every Nigerian, let us all commit that we have a country, and we have institutions, and we should respect those institutions, allow them to work. Right. If we have a suspicion that the security agencies are biased, as the governor of Anambra complained to the president, raise the flag. Let's give the authorities the opportunity to change them. But don't try to create trouble because your children have all been taken out abroad, or they are studying abroad, and it is the children of ordinary people that will be up in the streets killing one another. This is my appeal. Now, intervention is the higher form of interference, where countries intervene militarily. We've done that in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, but we only did so because we had the international community actually appealing to Nigeria to go in and restore order in that place. And it cost us a lot of money and lives, and we never got anything for it. We did it out of good neighborliness. Okay, those that are calling for anyone to come and intervene in Nigeria, we are waiting for the person that will come and intervene. They will go back in body bags. Okay. Because nobody will come to Nigeria and tell us how to run our country. We've got that independence, and we are trying to run our country as decently as possible. And we know the history of those countries that are trying to teach us these things. We have read their history. We also know at their own stages of development, they went through these challenges. So please, let's work together. Let's advise one another, but don't lecture us.
All right. We have callers already on the line. Do we still have the caller from Borno? Mustafa is on the line. Hello, Mustafa. Thanks for staying on.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Go right ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, sure, we can. Go ahead.
Yes. Good evening to you all.
Good evening. Just go on.
My name is Mustafa. I'm calling from Borno State. Please, I want to this to the politicians, that they should please and please, they should fear God. And they shouldn't be dividing Nigerians. Whether you are a Muslim or you are a Christian, they should please and please fear God and shouldn't be making some comments that they know that is not true in the name of politicking and dividing the country. Is not good. Politics is not a do or die affair. They should just go straight and be telling the truth to the Nigerian masses. Politicians are just using our level of education, our level of illiteracy, and taking the advantage, which is not good. They should come out and tell Nigerians what the issues are. They shouldn't be going by telling Nigerians that this man is old, his memory is this and that. That's not the issue. They should come out and tell us that we want to do so thing, we want to but by not dividing the country. They should please and please fear God, that they should know that they will be held accountable for all that they have done in this country. Thank you all, and God bless you all.
All right, thank you, Mustafa. Well, okay, Vedasarai, we'll come to you. This is still on the subject.
In appraising what His Excellency submitted regarding the issue of interference. Interference is repugnant to the doctrine of the independence itself, because it is something akin to encroachment into our foundation of sovereignty as a nation. Section 2, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Nigeria says Nigeria is an independent country. We therefore do not need teleguidance of anybody, no matter how super a power may be. And if you take our foreign policy drive, Section 19 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has 4 subsections. Section 19, subsection 1 says that the foreign policy of Nigeria shall be predicated on the interests and aspirations of Nigerian citizenry. Subsection 2 talks about the issue of the protection of the interests of the Africans and the black people. Subsection 3 talks about our freedom as an independent nation to be a power player in the Committee of Nations. And then the last one talks about obligation on us to respect international institutions and treaties. Now, going by these fundamental pillars of protection given to Nigeria as an independent sovereign nation, you should put it with an adage that says, it's only when you allow a crack on a wall that a lizard can penetrate through.
Absolutely.
Nigerian elites are the ones bringing about the possibility of all this interference. We have all the potentialities of greatness in the world. We have it. We have richness of resources, richness of human beings, richness of environment, and richness of location, and richness of size of the population of the country. Unfortunately, we derogated ourselves to a beggar nation. We are always out begging for this international interference in form of one thing or the other. Shameful as a nation to say that a quantum of our electoral processes, we are begging European Union, Department for International Development, International Republican Institute, the World Bank, the IMF, the European Union, the UK, the United States. We are begging them for capacity building regarding our electoral officers. We are begging them for equipments, for vehicles, for other things. We are begging them for loans. We are begging them for aids and assistance. By the time in international relations you open a window of inferiority by always begging to be going to be a beggar. My religion tells me that the hand of a giver is always superior over the hand of a receiver. Once we don't appreciate what God has given us, and we don't tally it in the quantum of independence, the doctrine of sovereignty, we should be independent, Tell me, which of the superpowers in the world is Nigerian contingent going there, interfering or organizing strikes, demonstrations, courtesy calls, visits, or what have you? But in Nigeria, an average elite do not believe that election is adjudged free, fair, and credible until it gets the endorsement of the international observers. This is very, very unfortunate. We should evolve independence from within ourselves, and we should believe that we are the masters of our own destinies. That is the only way we will run away from interference.
Right, let's go back to the phones quickly. We have calling in from Lagos, Patrick. Hello, Patrick. All right. We lost that call. Just keep the calls coming through, and hopefully we'll get in as many as we can. But for now, yes, it's time to take a quick break. When we return, there'll be more on tonight's subject matter. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. And as usual, we took out the cameras and spoke to the people. Let's get to see this.
The foreign intervention is highly important for our democracy, as to be very neutral in the assessment. So neutrality is very important for the credibility of the election. There must be international intervention. So it's a good idea.
Okay, so those that want us to fail, they will be disappointed. Has there not been a report sometime in the past that Nigeria was going to break up, by a few years back or so? But here we are. So it's up to us, I think. But for every credible Nigerian, I think we should take responsibility over this nation. We should take responsibility. We should not dance to the tune of international inputs or even local divergent views that tend to disintegrate us. We ought to stand together. Election is not a do or die affair. Somebody from UK or US cannot dictate to us what happens to us. You can see Americans, they are defending their own integrity by accusing those that are trying to interfere with their own electoral process. So I think that Nigerians also should take responsibility, to take ownership of our country.
That is why we must at least go out there and do the needful. Vote, not fight. Just at least allow people to do their right things on that day, and so nobody should just be called to say this is what is going to happen. In spite of all the tension we're also getting, I think it should not also at least raise unnecessary eyebrow. Because what we have seen, even in 2015, they predicted some of all these things did not come to pass. So today we are still going to pass through these hurdles. So Nigerians should not just give in to some of all these things and say is biased or not biased. Whether it's biased, whether they have the sentiment, whether they just want to at least take us for a ride, that is not going to help the situation. They must at least keep to the rules of the game.
That's Nigerian election. They don't have so much intervention because we are a country and we have been doing this type of election. Not them that will come and elect somebody for us. If they are coming, it's not to make peace in this country. They are to come to cause problem. We have right to even tell them they should not come.
The citizens airing their views. Let's come back to the studio and then move over to our guests here. Still speaking on the subject of, yes, it's been said, even security agencies have raised the alarm that some plots have been uncovered showing that there may well be an attempt to scuttle the whole process by creating tension and creating rancor in the system. And it's been said that some of those who are trying to do this have outside help.
I mean, it's clear in security parlance there's something we call psychological operations. And so oftentimes foreign governments come in with those kind of antics through, it could be media, it could be statements such as the ones we've had, it could be using certain elements in the particular country they're interested in to foment whatever issues they want to. And so you're going to be seeing a situation that's going to be happening more often for as long as we keep subjugating or subjecting our sovereignty to these people. I find it quite an aberration, really, that every time we have an issue in Nigeria, we have to start calling on the international community. It's laughable, and I think this has just started happening just in recent times, and I think we're building a culture that is not good for our politics. Our politics must be able, like the governor said, to be able to evolve. Our societies must evolve, and we alone can work on it to evolve. I mean, if you have a problem, like he said earlier, political parties, even with Prof, when Prof was talking about the constant cross-carpeting, but the political parties, whether you like it or not, I agree with the governor because there's been progress. It may be slow, but there's actually been progress. And if we keep having to run to America or running to the UK or running to the EU to give us a template of how we are supposed to run our own politics or how we are supposed to manage our conflicts, then we're not going to make that progress. They're also, because, I mean, if you look at it, everybody who is coming in with one statement or one interference, however we want to call it, has an interest. Whether it's economic, whether it's political, whether it's social, they all have an interest. Nigeria is the biggest market in Africa. Nigeria possesses probably the greatest potential to become a superpower in Africa. And if you look at international politics, these people will definitely want to keep controlling things. And so I think it's something that we shouldn't encourage. Politicians must have conflicts, must also learn how to handle those conflicts, and we must handle them as Nigerians.
Internally.
Because before even independence, we had governments in our various communities, and we handled these conflicts. I'm not sure before independence we had to call one white man to come probably to my village in settle. And they still exist, those levels of
mechanisms.
Those mechanisms. So I don't understand why we can't get to this level and still be able to manage ourselves.
Yeah.
So I find it truly an aberration, and I think it's something like some of the people who spoke on the streets. They spoke quite well as Nigerians. We are a proud people, and I think that we must maintain that pride in our nation.
Perhaps that's something we should look into and say, what is it that drives a citizen to say nothing is appropriate, nothing is credible, unless it has been endorsed from a foreign point of view? What do you think?
Well, I think self-interest, in the sense that, like I have said before, for 16 years, we had a ruling party that ruled Nigeria. And within that period, legal business and illegal business had taken place. For instance, the theft of our crude, the money laundering. If you recall, I think it was like a couple of months ago when HSBC Bank came out with a statement disparaging Nigerian economy. But this is the same bank that was fined by the United States government for aiding and abetting money laundering. And they are also a conduit pipe where money goes out from Nigeria to those banks. So if you look at UK, United States, places, in the US like Houston, Texas, New York, just think of the properties, illegal properties that have been acquired from corrupt resources from Nigerian officials. So there is always an element, those type of elements within those governmental cycles. And the other side in Nigeria, the opposition side, will always reach out to these people, in order to appeal to them so that they can find a way to intervene in our affairs. Because if there is one thing those nations have in common against Nigeria, is for Nigeria not to do well. And they don't mind. They can talk about the corruption, they can laugh, they can do in their midnight shows and other things. So long as Nigeria remains perpetually as a corrupt nation where people look at us as very corrupt. But with what the president has done within the last 3.5 to 4 years has not been easy in those places. If you talk to Americans who are in banking, who are in oil, they will tell you it's no longer business as usual. So they will not like that. But it's left for our security services to be on the alert, and also Nigerian citizens to make sure that this election is not decided in the street of Brussels or London or New York or Washington, D.C. Every nation has its own problem, and we have enough intellectuals and goodwill within Nigeria to solve our own problems.
All right, let's go back to the phones. We have calling in from Maiduguri, Kabiru. Hello, Kabiru.
Hello. Good evening, young program, the governor, executive of the Kaduna State and the rest of the state. Thank you for having this place. Yes, I am Kabiru, Maiduguri, the state capital of the state. Firstly, I would like to appreciate the president on his fundamental agenda, security, corruption, and economy. Many people of Maiduguri entirely with we have seen efforts on this security matter. Before the coming of Mr. President, we have been attacked by Boko Haram insurgencies. Many of our markets might have lost. We have no school. Everything scattered within the state, but now we have seen a lot of changes. Many of our people become refugees. Children become orphans. Women become widows within the state. So I'm telling you, if you see our people living in IDP camps before, you will cry. Because they are human beings like us. They left their houses from barrios, local government, almost about 70 local government were within the state capital. So we thank God, but now, no, that's not many local government which is attacked by Boko Haram. Many of people have gone up to their local government. So please, let me tell this thing to the rest of our lawmakers to try as much as possible to support this Mr. President. Because they are suffering him. Let's all cooperate with Mr. President on fighting security, fighting corruption. Because this country is the country we're going to fall out. We have no any country like Nigeria. Nigeria is our own. Less politicians should concern and decided what they should do for Nigerians, not for their personal interests. Please, our politicians should try to do best for our country. But
all right.
Federal Republic of
Okay, Kabiru. Thanks a lot for calling in. Let's go back to Lagos now. Prof, there's something I want you to look at, and this has to do with institutions that are in place as you progress to the general elections. You have the Independent National Electoral Commission, and you have the instruments that empowers it to conduct elections. Now you have various platforms where people can seek redress if they believe that they've not been dealt a fair hand. And sometimes it goes as far as the Supreme Court. What is in this apparatus that says every other thing is compromised except you are in charge? In other words, what are the signals or what are those things that will make a Nigerian feel that these platforms are inadequate unless they are in charge of those platforms?
I think basically that there's one reason, and that is the reason of psychology of human differences. You see, when people do not have a correct understanding of an issue, recommendations, policies, perceptions will be given differently. And we have just seen it in this Tuesday Live. Even from the perspectives of the citizens interviewed on the streets, everybody uses the word interference, intervention, interchangeably. But I want to insist that they do not mean the same thing. Now, those who are advising government, if you do not have a clear understanding of the conception of a crisis and a conflict, it's not the same thing in polymology. When crisis degenerates at the level of non-diplomatic intervention, it goes to the level of a conflict. In the same way, when we talk about interference, people are saying there should not be interference, when already there is interference on the ground. Are we not going to have, for instance, the international observers? They are already here. The mere fact that you consciously give, permission to international people to come and observe, to see how you are doing it, what is that? So what international law prohibits is non-intervention. The word non-intervention is what is used specifically in Article 2, Paragraph 7. Go and check that. It didn't talk about interference, but they used that one. So all these institutions that are there, you see, I said earlier on, and I want to insist, I do not have to agree with Nasir. I do not have to agree with all others for reasons of psychology of human differences. Nasir's school of thought, I don't belong to that one. The critical point is that people are not helping Muhammadu Buhari. Research has pointed to that. They are not helping the man who wants to fight frontally corruption. They are not. And the issue now, what I'm saying here, when people do not believe in the various institutions, it is simply because of the environmental conditionings of politics in Nigeria. If we begin to enumerate, you will see that. I'm a research fellow. I'm not APC, I'm not Abuja, I'm not anything. My own is to do research and draw attention to it. You see, the critical point, the critical problem in Nigeria is that people do not want to address issues and let Mr. President do it and resolve it. It's as simple as that. So people know, okay, for instance, let's take INEC. What is the debate about Zachary? Why should there be any debate there? Look at that one. What we are saying, in essence, is that at the end of the day, everybody wants a better Nigeria. When Sarah was talking about we have not done much, that since 1885 to date, we should have done better. That is the ideal thing. The ideal thing. And in this case, why are we there? I am positing here that in Nigeria, for instance, I do not strongly believe that the system promotes dint of hard work. It doesn't encourage patriotism. It encourages anti-Nigeria. Political governance in Nigeria encourages that, and it is not good. Buhari, when he was a military head of state, came up with why? War against indiscipline. And everybody has been looking at him from that perspective. But look at what his entourage, all right, is doing. So if people are not believing in all the various institutions, please let us address this issue of who is addressing that. When I read, for instance, the report by Nasir, especially on restructuring, I say we still have some courageous, patriotic Nigerians. Why are we not discussing that? They are critical to the elections, the institutions we are talking about. So you see, for us, who want, a strong, vibrant Nigeria, free from political chicanery, all right? When we are talking about this, the system, the entourage does not allow Buhari to govern Nigeria with people that are giving him support. This is the issue. So I am part of those who believe that, look, the way all these institutions are working, they themselves, they will make pronouncements that give room for Nigerian people to be suspecting. This is the issue. Let the people who are working with him, please look at it more critically.
Let me stay with you for a little longer. And this, I want you to bring it down now to the Nigerian citizen, not necessarily a politician, not necessarily, someone in government or technocrat or whatever. But you do find that there is a penchant for always wanting someone out there to approve of what you've done. And some say this is an invitation to, intervention and interference. In other words, why is it's not good enough unless someone from outside this country has validated it? And this is not just with politicians alone.
Is that I will make 2 points in one. You see, you have NGOs, non-governmental organizations, being given international support. That interference already is done through such NGOs. You say you don't want interference, but the instruments of the interference are on the ground. Let me probably shock you, quote and unquote. African leaders, I repeat, African leaders, do they know that in the desert, sub-Sahara Africa, there is a military base at the center of the desert. It doesn't have any access road to and fro. We were told about this story by one foreign minister when they were flying. And then when they saw that, what's happening in this place? This is a military base. They tried to turn back and see. And they were giving us in Nigeria, go back. Who is talking about that? The instruments of interference and intervention are on ground. All African leaders condone that one already. So what are we talking about? I do not want us to just sit down here. Look, if, for instance, Muhammadu Buhari were to be against Nigeria and were not